Questions. Today everyone wants to look valuable. Designer bags, fancy filters, curated selfies, but very few want to be valuable. And when I say high value woman questions, I don't mean the price tag on your outfit. I mean the worth of your character. Diamonds don't scream, I'm valuable, they just shine. So, questions. Today, let's learn how to shine without shouting. And once a young lady told me, Guruji, I want to be a high value woman. What should I buy first? I smiled and said, questions. A mirror and a window. She was confused. I said, the mirror reminds you to look within. Questions. The window reminds you to look beyond yourself. High value women don't just look good, they do good. Questions. The balance between self-awareness and selflessness is the beginning of value. Let's look at 10 qualities that truly define a high value woman, not in the eyes of society, questions, but in the light of wisdom. A high value woman doesn't chase validation. She knows her value even when others don't see it. Questions. Just like gold doesn't lose value when hidden underground. Your worth is inherent, not dependent on applause. Supposer. If you don't know your own worth, questions, the world will bargain you down. Being strong doesn't mean never crying. It means not letting anger, jealousy, or insecurity drive your life. As Gaur Gopal says, questions. Emotions are like guests. Invite them, but don't let them run your home. Our power isn't in volume, it's in calmness. The way you say things determines how deeply people hear them. Questions. A high value woman speaks like a river. Clear, calm, and consistent. Growth-minded women talk about ideas, not people. Remember, when you water gossip, your garden of peace dies. Questions. If someone brings gossip to you, tell them, sorry. Questions. I'm on a gossip diet. Independence doesn't mean I don't need anyone. It means I'm complete with or without anyone. She collaborates without losing her individuality. Questions. Not every party, not every person, not every post deserves your presence. Energy is like currency. Spend it wisely. Questions. Protect your peace like it's your password. The world measures beauty by appearance. Wisdom measures it by attitude. True elegance is in how you treat the waiter, the cleaner, the driver. Questions. Remember, being kind never makes you small. It makes you shine. A high-value woman doesn't just live, she lives for something. Whether it's uplifting others, caring for family, questions, or improving society, she finds meaning in service. The greatest joy comes when I becomes. The high-value woman is a lifelong student. Every challenge teaches her humility. Questions. Every failure teaches her strength. Don't aim to be perfect, aim to be progressing. Lastly, what truly makes a woman high value is her faith. Faith in God, faith in herself. Questions. Faith in the process. Storms don't scare her, they shape her. When you have faith, you glow differently. You walk differently. Questions. You attract differently. So my dear sisters, becoming a high value woman isn't about competing with anyone. It's about connecting with yourself, with others, and with your purpose. Questions. Don't try to impress the world, inspire it. Don't just shine like a diamond, illuminate like the sun. And remember, high value women don't demand attention. Questions. Their presence commands respect. Questions. In today's world, it's so easy to forget your value. We live in a time where your likes decide your confidence, followers decide your importance. Questions. And people's opinions decide your happiness. But the truth is, your worth has nothing to do with numbers. Questions. A high-value woman knows that her value doesn't decrease just because someone fails to see it. The sun doesn't lose its light just because someone has closed their curtains. You see, questions. Sometimes life will put you in situations where people will overlook you, underestimate you, or even walk away from you. That's okay. Questions. Your worth is not dependent on their recognition. It's rooted in your realization. Let me tell you a story. There was a girl who walked into a jewelry store and saw two diamond rings. Questions. One was shining brightly in the display case. The other looked dull and unpolished in the corner. She asked the jeweler questions. Why is this one so expensive when it looks so dull? The jeweler smiled and said, because this one hasn't been touched by too many hands. It's been kept safe. Questions. Its shine is natural, not artificial though. In life, some people might not see your shine because they are too used to fake glitter. Questions. But a high-value woman never dims her light just to make others comfortable. Every time you look in the mirror, remind yourself, I am not defined by what I wear. Questions. But by what I carry within me. The world may not always applaud your efforts, but that doesn't mean they are not valuable. When you plant a seed, you don't see it grow immediately. You water it. Questions. You nurture it, and one day it becomes a tree. Value works the same way. It's not always visible, but it's always growing. A high-value woman knows that validation from others is temporary. Questions. But respect for herself is permanent. She doesn't beg for attention, she attracts it by being authentic. When you know who you are, you stop needing people to remind you. Questions. When you know what you bring to the table, you don't wait for an invitation to sit. Let's make this practical. Think about your phone. When the battery is low, you don't throw it away. Questions. You charge it. Similarly, when your confidence is low, don't throw yourself into self-doubt. Recharge yourself with positive thoughts, good company, and spiritual connection. Questions. Because when you operate from your inner power, you radiate a strength that the world can't ignore. Sometimes life will test your worth. Maybe your boss didn't appreciate your hard work. Questions. Maybe someone you love doesn't reciprocate your efforts. Maybe society makes you feel like you're less than because you don't fit into its boxes. Questions. But remember, even if people undervalue gold, it still remains gold. It never becomes copper because of someone's opinion. In relationships, many people try to earn love by over-giving. Questions. Over-pleasing and over-apologizing. But a high-value woman doesn't trade her peace to prove her love. Questions. She knows that real love doesn't demand you to shrink yourself to fit someone's comfort zone. She knows that if she has to beg to be respected, that place is not her home. Questions. There's a big difference between arrogance and awareness. Knowing your worth is not arrogance. It's awareness of your divine nature. Arrogance says, questions. I'm better than others. Awareness says, I don't have to compare myself to anyone. The flower doesn't compete with the next flower. It simply blooms. Every day. Questions. Life gives you moments to either forget your worth or to affirm it. When you make a mistake, don't call yourself a failure. Remind yourself, I'm learning. When someone rejects you, questions, don't say I'm not enough. Say, that wasn't meant for me. When something doesn't go as planned, don't say, I'm unlucky. Say, questions, something better is on the way. That is how a high-value woman lives. With faith, not fear, with dignity, not desperation. Let me share a daily life example. Think of a job interview. Questions, you walk in confident, qualified, and prepared. But the interviewer doesn't select you. Now, two things can happen. You can either think, maybe I'm not good enough, or you can think, questions, maybe this wasn't the right place for me. The first response makes you doubt your worth. The second makes you guard. Questions. You didn't lose your value. You just weren't in the right environment to express it. A diamond doesn't shine in darkness, it needs light. Another example. Questions. Imagine you text someone and they don't reply for hours. Instantly. Questions. The mind starts playing games. Did I say something wrong? Are they ignoring me? Am I not important? But a high-value woman smiles and says, maybe they're busy. Questions. And even if they're not, I'm not going to let this disturb my peace. Why? Because she values her emotional stability more than digital attention. You see, questions. Knowing your worth means you don't chase after things that disturb your peace. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. Questions. You stop seeking closure from situations that ended long ago. You stop apologizing for being yourself. And when you start living like that, questions, something magical happens. The world starts respecting you more because people treat you based on what you tolerate. When you respect yourself, others learn how to treat you. Questions. When you value your time, people stop wasting it. When you love yourself rightly, people learn how to love you too. So, if you ever feel like you've lost your value, questions, take a deep breath and remember this. Gold doesn't rust, diamonds don't dissolve, and your worth doesn't disappear just because someone failed to see it. Questions. Don't look for someone to complete you. Look for someone who celebrates you. Don't try to be everyone's cup of tea. Just be your own favorite flavor. Questions. And don't forget, a high-value woman doesn't ask, am I good enough? She knows, I am already enough. Questions. And I'm still growing, because the most beautiful glow up isn't when your face shines with makeup. It's when your soul shines with self-worth. Questions. Emotional discipline. These two words sound simple, but they hold the power to transform your entire life. A high-value woman understands that emotions are beautiful servants, but dangerous masters. Questions. She feels deeply, but she doesn't let those feelings control her. You see, strength is not in how loudly you react, but in how calmly you respond. In today's world, questions. People often think that being expressive means being dramatic, that showing emotions means shouting, crying, or arguing louder than the other person. But true emotional intelligence is quiet. Questions. It's graceful. It's knowing when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to simply walk away. I once heard a beautiful saying, the calmer you are, the clearer you think. The clearer you think, questions, the better you live. Emotional discipline is not about suppressing emotions. It's about channeling them. A river that flows gently can give life to everything around it. Questions. But when it floods uncontrollably, it destroys. The same happens with our emotions. Imagine this, you're driving to work and someone cuts you off in traffic. Instantly anger flares up. You honk. Questions. You shout, you get irritated. But the other person doesn't even know you're angry. You're the one burning inside. The situation ends in 10 seconds. Questions. But you spend the next 30 minutes replaying it in your mind. That's emotional slavery. A high-value woman sees the same situation and says to herself, maybe that person is having a tough day. Questions. Let me not lose my peace for their mistake. That's emotional mastery. It's not that she doesn't feel anger. She simply refuses to live in it. Questions. Emotional discipline means learning to pause before reacting. The pause is powerful. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies your freedom. Questions. When you practice that pause, you protect your peace, because not every message deserves an instant reply. Not every insult deserves a response. And not every situation deserves your energy. Questions. One of the biggest signs of emotional maturity is the ability to stay kind in an unkind situation. Anyone can smile when life is easy. Questions. But it takes a truly high-value woman to stay calm when everything is shaking. It's easy to be nice when people are nice to you, but the real test is when they're not. Questions. Let me give you a daily life example. Imagine you're working hard on a project and your boss criticizes you harshly in front of everyone. The first reaction, hurt, embarrassment, maybe even anger. Questions. But emotional discipline says, pause. Instead of reacting emotionally, you breathe. You remind yourself, I'll take this as feedback, not insult. Later, when emotions settle, questions. You approach your boss calmly, ask for clarity, and improve. That's how you turn pain into power. Another example, You're in a relationship and your partner says something insensitive. Questions. Instead of instantly firing back or starting a cold war, emotional discipline says, I'll address this when I'm calm. Because when you speak in anger, you create wounds. Questions. When you speak in peace, you create understanding. A high-value woman knows that not everything needs a reaction. Silence is sometimes stronger than words. Questions. Distance is sometimes healthier than confrontation. Walking away peacefully is sometimes louder than shouting your point. Emotional discipline also means understanding your own triggers. Questions, we all have them. Moments, words, or people that set us off. But instead of avoiding them, blaming others, a high-value woman studies them. She asks herself, why does this upset me? Questions. What wound inside me needs healing? Because emotional discipline begins with emotional awareness. When you are aware of your emotions, you can navigate them wisely. You stop saying, questions, you made me angry, and start saying, I allowed myself to get angry. That small shift puts the power back in your hands. Questions. And let's be honest, we all have those days when everything goes wrong. The traffic, the workload, the misunderstandings. But a high-value woman trains her mind to stay centered. Questions. She understands that she cannot control the waves, but she can learn to surf. She takes deep breaths, goes for a walk, listens to calming music. Questions. Or prays. Because she knows peace is not something she finds outside. It's something she cultivates within. Here's a truth worth remembering. Emotional discipline is a daily practice. Questions. Just like you exercise to strengthen your body, you must train your mind to stay balanced. Every time you choose calmness over chaos, you grow stronger. Questions. Every time you choose understanding over argument, you evolve. Every time you choose peace over pride, you rise higher. Think about your phone again. When too many apps are open, questions, it slows down or overheats. Emotions work the same way. When anger, jealousy, anxiety, and worry are all open in your mind, you feel exhausted. Questions. Emotional discipline means closing those mental tabs and focusing on what truly matters. And this doesn't mean you become cold or detached. Questions. Emotional discipline doesn't make you heartless. It makes you heart-wise. It allows you to love deeply but not lose yourself. To care genuinely but not be consumed. Questions. To feel fully but still remain centered. A high-value woman doesn't chase peace. She creates it. She doesn't get dragged into drama. She rises above it. Questions. Because she knows her energy is precious, her mind is powerful, and her peace is priceless. So, the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this: reacting is easy. Questions. But responding with grace is strength. The next time you're overwhelmed, breathe. Remind yourself, this too shall pass. The storm may be outside, but your calm is within. Questions. And when you master your emotions, you master your life. You glow differently because nothing external can shake your internal balance. People will notice your calmness and wonder. Questions. How does she stay so composed? That's when you'll smile, knowing the secret. Emotional discipline isn't about controlling the world. It's about controlling yourself. And that, questions, my friend, is what makes a woman truly high value. Not the noise she makes, but the peace she carries wherever she goes. Questions. Words are powerful. They can build bridges or burn them. They can heal hearts or hurt them. The way you speak doesn't just reflect your education. It reveals your character. Questions. A high-value woman understands that true power is not in the loudness of her voice, but in the calmness of her tone. She doesn't use her words to impress, she uses them to inspire. Questions. In today's world, where people argue to win and shout to be heard, grace has become rare. But grace is the language of strength, quiet, gentle, and deeply impactful. Questions. You can't buy it with money or fake it with filters. It comes from inner peace and emotional maturity. A high-value woman knows that speaking with grace doesn't mean being weak. Questions. It means being wise. It's knowing when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to walk away. It's understanding that shouting doesn't make you strong. Self-control does. Questions. When others lose their calm, she keeps hers. When others speak to hurt, she speaks to heal. Let me tell you a story. Once a woman came to me very upset. She said, "People keep misinterpreting me." Questions. I speak the truth, but they call me rude. I asked her, when you serve food to a guest, do you throw it at them or do you serve it with care? She laughed and said, "Of course." Questions. I serve it carefully. I smiled and said, "Truth is food for the mind. Even truth, when thrown harshly, can hurt. But when served with grace," questions, "it nourishes." That's what grace in speech means. To say what needs to be said, but in a way that uplifts, not destroys. Think of your favorite teacher or mentor. Questions. You probably don't remember every word they said, but you remember how they made you feel. The same applies to how we speak. People may forget your words, but they will never forget your tone. Questions. Graceful speech leaves a fragrance long after the conversation is over. In daily life, we face countless moments that test our patience. Imagine this: you're standing in a long queue. Questions. And someone cuts ahead of you. Instinctively, you feel irritated. You could snap at them, or you could say calmly, "Excuse me, there's a line here." The words may be similar. Questions. But the tone changes everything. Grace doesn't change the truth. It changes the impact of the truth. A high-value woman doesn't speak to prove her superiority. She speaks to bring understanding. Questions. Even in disagreement, she maintains dignity. When she's hurt, she doesn't use words as weapons. She understands that revenge may satisfy the ego for a moment, but respect lasts a lifetime. Questions. Many people think that if you're soft-spoken, people will take you for granted. But that's not true. Grace doesn't mean silence. It means elegance. Questions. It's like a river, gentle on the surface, but powerful beneath. When you speak gracefully, people listen not because they're afraid of you, but because they respect you. Questions. One of the biggest lessons in life is to learn how to speak during conflicts. Arguments often escalate not because of the issue itself, but because of how we talk about it. Questions. Two people can discuss the same problem. One turns it into a war, the other turns it into wisdom. The difference lies in grace. Let's take a real-life example. You're in a relationship. Questions. And your partner forgets your birthday. Naturally, you feel hurt. One way to respond is, "You never care about me. You always forget what matters to me." The other way is, questions. "I felt a little hurt that you forgot my birthday. It would mean a lot to me if you remembered next time." The first response attacks, the second communicates. One creates distance, questions. The other builds connection. Grace transforms communication into understanding. The same applies at work. Suppose your colleague made a mistake that affected your project. You could yell blame, questions, and embarrass them, or you could say, "We all make mistakes. Let's fix this together." The problem gets solved, but more importantly, respect is preserved. Questions. And that is the hallmark of a high-value woman. She solves problems without creating more. Words are like seeds. Once you plant them, they will grow, either into flowers or into thorns. So, questions. Before you speak, ask yourself, will this plant peace or pain? A graceful woman always chooses her words like a gardener chooses seeds, with care, with love, with intention. Questions. There's also a deeper side to this. Sometimes speaking with grace means saying nothing at all. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom in action. When someone is arguing just to prove a point, questions. When people are gossiping or trying to provoke you, silence becomes your crown. Not every battle needs your sword, some only need your stillness. Questions. And let's not forget, how we speak to ourselves matters even more than how we speak to others. A high-value woman speaks kindly to her own heart. She doesn't call herself names when she fails. Questions. She doesn't tear herself down in the mirror. Instead, she says, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm enough. Because self-talk shapes self-worth. Questions. You can't speak grace to others if you don't speak grace to yourself. There will be moments when anger burns inside, when frustration clouds your mind, and when words are ready to burst out. Questions. In those moments, pause. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, will I regret saying this later? That one pause can save relationships, preserve peace, and protect your dignity. Questions. A woman who speaks with grace carries a certain aura. Her words calm storms. Her voice brings comfort. Her presence demands respect without asking for it. Questions. Because people feel safe around those who speak kindly. They open up, they trust. And that's how she influences. Not through authority, but through empathy. So, if you wish to be truly high value, questions, let your words be your signature of wisdom. Speak truth, but wrap it in kindness. Express your feelings, but with respect. And when you speak, let others feel peace in your presence. Questions. Because at the end of the day, beauty may attract people, but grace in speech keeps them. Words may fade, but the impact of your tone, that gentle, wise, questions, compassionate tone, will echo in their hearts forever. A high-value woman doesn't raise her voice. She raises the vibration of the room. And that's the kind of power the world remembers. Questions. One of the most defining traits of a high-value woman is that she chooses growth over gossip. In a world that thrives on noise, opinions, and endless chatter about others' lives, questions, she chooses silence that nurtures her soul and conversations that nourish her mind. She understands that gossip may give temporary excitement, but growth gives permanent elevation. Questions. It's easy to get caught up in the web of gossip, the small talks, the judgments, the did you hear what she did, whispers that swirl around in every corner of society. Questions. But here's a truth we often forget when you talk about people. You waste your potential. When you talk about ideas, you multiply it. Questions. A high-value woman doesn't spend her energy analyzing others' mistakes. She invests that energy in improving herself. Imagine a garden. Questions. If you spend all your time complaining about the weeds in your neighbor's yard, you'll forget to water your own flowers. Gossip does exactly that. It distracts you from your own growth. Questions. It shifts your focus from becoming better to judging others. But the woman who values herself knows that her time is too precious to be spent discussing people who are not even part of her journey. Questions. Let me tell you a simple story. A young woman once complained, everyone in my office gossips. If I don't join in, they'll think I'm arrogant. Her mentor smiled and said, questions. When an eagle flies, do you think it worries about what the crows are cawing about? She laughed. The mentor continued, eagles soar high not because they are proud, questions, but because their wings were never designed to fly low. That's exactly what it means to choose growth over gossip. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. Questions. It's realizing that every minute spent in gossip is a minute stolen from your dreams. In daily life, gossip often disguises itself as concern. I'm not saying this to judge her. Questions. Buttered. And before you know it, the conversation turns into a character analysis session. But a high-value woman knows how to stop that energy in its tracks. Questions. She gracefully shifts the topic or simply walks away. She doesn't feed the fire because she knows that when you throw words into gossip, you also throw your dignity with it. Questions. Let's look at a real-life example. Imagine you're sitting in your office cafeteria and a group starts talking about a colleague's personal life, how she dresses, who she's dating, questions, or what mistakes she made. It's tempting to join in. It makes you feel like you belong. But later you walk away feeling drained. Questions. That's the nature of gossip. It entertains the mind but empties the heart. On the other hand, when you engage in meaningful conversations about goals, ideas, spirituality, questions, creativity, you walk away feeling alive, inspired, and full of purpose. That's the difference between gossip and growth. Gossip is the language of small minds. Questions. Growth is the language of strong souls. The woman who chooses growth knows that her words have power. She uses them to uplift, not to undermine. Instead of saying, questions, did you see what she did? She says, what can I learn from her experience? Instead of saying, I can't believe she made that mistake, she says, questions, I've made mistakes too. I hope she learns from hers. That shift in perspective doesn't just make her wise, it makes her worthy. Another everyday scenario. Questions. You're scrolling through social media and you see someone's success, a friend's promotion, a peer's new car, or someone's vacation pictures. The mind immediately starts comparing. Questions. Oh, she's so lucky. I bet she had help. It's not that big of a deal. That's the voice of gossip disguised as insecurity. But a high-value woman pauses and says, good for her. Questions. I'm happy to see others grow. My time will come. That mindset turns jealousy into motivation and competition into inspiration. You see, gossip is not just about words. It's a mindset. Questions. It's what happens when we're too focused on others instead of our own journey. But growth is also a mindset. One that asks questions. How can I become better today? A high-value woman surrounds herself with people who talk about dreams, not drama. When she sits with friends, they discuss books, purpose, business ideas, questions, spirituality, health, and how to make life meaningful. Those conversations expand her mind and elevate her soul. She doesn't chase trends, she chases transformation. Questions. And that's why her presence feels refreshing. Because she doesn't bring chaos into the room, she brings clarity. There's an old saying, questions. What Susie says about Sally says more about Susie than about Sally. Think about that. Every time we gossip about someone, we reveal more about our own insecurities than their flaws. Questions. But when we focus on growth, we show maturity. We show that we've learned to rise above pettiness. Now, choosing growth over gossip doesn't mean being perfect or emotionless. It means being aware. Questions. It means catching yourself when the temptation to gossip arises and asking, why am I saying this? Questions. Is this adding value to my life or someone else's? Growth begins in those moments of self-reflection. And sometimes growth also means protecting your peace from those who thrive on gossip. Questions. You don't have to cut them off harshly, just change your energy. Spend less time where negativity is the main topic. Because what you feed your mind becomes your mindset. Questions. If you constantly feed it gossip, you'll become reactive and judgmental. But if you feed it knowledge, kindness, and gratitude, you'll become radiant. So, questions. The next time someone brings you a story about another person, smile gently and say, questions. Let's talk about something that inspires us instead. You'll notice that some people may step back, and that's fine. Because your growth will naturally filter out those who prefer gossip. Questions. A high-value woman doesn't have time to speak about others because she's too busy building herself. She's focused on her goals, her peace, her evolution. Questions. She understands that every minute invested in gossip takes her one step away from greatness. So she protects her conversations like she protects her energy, with boundaries and wisdom. Questions. And when people look at her, they feel something different. Her words don't carry judgment, they carry light. Her tone doesn't spread rumor, it spreads respect. Questions. And that's how she quietly transforms not just her own life, but the lives of those around her. So remember this, gossip fades, but growth lasts. The crowd may gossip, but leaders grow. Questions. Choose conversations that help you rise, not crumble. Because when you choose growth over gossip, you don't just become a high-value woman. you become a woman of substance. Questions. A high-value woman walks with grace and strength, but she also walks with wisdom. The wisdom to know that independence doesn't mean isolation. Questions. In a world that often confuses being strong with being alone, she understands that true independence is not about shutting people out. Questions. It's about standing tall without leaning on validation. It's about knowing that you can walk alone, but choosing to walk with others in harmony. You see, questions. Many people mistake independence for emotional distance. They say, I don't need anyone. I can do it all by myself. But deep down, they crave connection, warmth, and belonging. Questions. A high-value woman doesn't build walls. She builds boundaries. She doesn't depend on others for her happiness, but she allows others to be a part of it. Questions. There's a story of a tree and a mountain. The mountain stood tall and proud, saying, Look at me, I stand strong on my own. The tree replied, Yes, but you don't give shade. Questions. You don't offer fruit, and you don't sing with the wind. I may bend with the storm, but I nourish life around me. Independence without connection is like that mountain. Strong but lonely. Questions. The woman who truly values herself knows how to balance both. She's grounded like the mountain but nurturing like the tree. In daily life, independence shows up in small but powerful ways. Questions. It's the woman who pays her own bills and builds her own dreams. It's the woman who says no to what doesn't align with her peace. It's the woman who makes decisions from confidence. Questions. Not from fear. But her independence doesn't make her arrogant. It makes her authentic. She doesn't look down on others for needing help because she knows that everyone's journey is different. Questions. Let's imagine a simple situation. You're at work and a team project is assigned. Some people refuse help because they want to prove they can do everything alone. But the high-value woman says, Questions. Let's collaborate. Let's bring our strengths together. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. She knows that independence is not about doing everything by yourself. Questions. It's about knowing what you can do and what you can share. Another example, think about relationships. Society often teaches women that independence means not needing a partner. Questions. Not depending on anyone emotionally. But true independence is not about rejecting love. It's about not losing yourself in love. A high-value woman can love deeply, care wholeheartedly, questions, and still maintain her individuality. She gives love as a choice, not as a currency for validation. She knows her worth whether she's single or taken. Questions. Whether she's surrounded by people or sitting alone in silence. Her happiness isn't rented from someone else. It's built within. Questions. That's the kind of independence that shines quietly and speaks loudly. Many people fear loneliness and confuse it with solitude. But there's a huge difference. Loneliness says, Questions. I'm missing something. Solitude says, I'm discovering something. A high-value woman embraces solitude because that's where she reconnects with herself. She reads, writes, meditates, questions, or simply sits in peace. She doesn't rush to fill the silence because she understands that silence is not emptiness. It's a sacred space where self-awareness grows. Questions. Think about your phone again. When it's running too many apps, it overheats and slows down. Sometimes you need to close everything and let it rest. The same applies to us. Questions. The woman who is truly independent knows when to disconnect from the world to recharge her soul. She doesn't fear being alone because she has learned to be her own best friend. Yet, questions. She also knows that life becomes richer when shared. She values friendships that add meaning, not drama. She uplifts others because she's not threatened by their success. Questions. She understands that supporting others doesn't make her less, it makes her more. Independence is not a solo performance, it's knowing your role in life's orchestra and playing it with harmony. Questions. In her independence, she doesn't seek attention, she commands respect. People admire her not because she's unapproachable, but because she's balanced. Questions. She can make decisions without needing constant approval, but she's humble enough to ask for advice when needed. That's emotional maturity. The perfect blend of self-reliance and openness. Questions. Let's take another real-life example. Imagine a woman who has just gone through a difficult breakup. Some people would drown in sadness or cling to others for comfort. Questions. But a high-value woman uses that pain as fuel for growth. She doesn't build bitterness, she builds boundaries. She learns to enjoy her own company, invests in her passions, questions, and rebuilds her confidence. She might cry, yes, but she also rises. She says, I may have lost someone, questions, but I haven't lost myself. That is independence in its purest form, healing with dignity. Independence is also about having your own opinions. Questions. The high-value woman doesn't just follow trends or echo others. She listens, learns, and then decides what aligns with her values. She's not afraid to stand alone for what's right. Questions. Even when it's unpopular. Her voice doesn't need to be the loudest, it needs to be the truest. But despite her strength, she never stops being kind. Questions. She knows that independence without compassion turns into ego. That's why she remains humble. She helps others rise, she mentors, she shares, she loves. She doesn't compete with other women. Questions. She celebrates them. Her independence doesn't separate her. It connects her because people can feel her confidence without intimidation. Questions. There's a calm beauty in being independent yet connected. Knowing that you can walk alone, but choosing to hold hands when needed. Questions. The high-value woman understands that strength is not measured by how many people you can do without, but by how gracefully you coexist with others while staying true to yourself. So, questions. The next time someone tells you that being independent means being alone, smile and remember this. The moon shines alone, yet it draws its light from the sun. Questions. Interdependence doesn't mean isolation. It means illumination. It means knowing that you are whole on your own, but you still choose to share your light with the world. Questions. A high-value woman doesn't build her world on dependence or detachment, she builds it on balance. She's strong enough to stand alone, wise enough to ask for help, questions, and loving enough to share her strength with others. And that combination, strength, humility, and connection, is what makes her truly independent and deeply powerful.